chat, so I don't know if there'll be much chatting. I'm going to try and be as brief and quick as I can be. I've got to go for a cycle ride in about 2 hours. I've got to leave here in about 2 hours, so I can't spend too much time interacting, but I will try to kind of engage with you guys as we go through the affidavit. This is episode 3, and we are going to be looking at page 12 and probably around about 10 pages further. We're going to kind of go through those details. It kind of is a bit weird having the chat so empty. I know this was very short notice for many of you. I see Terry Dean is here. Good to have you here from Northern California. I think it's about 8 o'clock in the evening. Maybe it's not 8 o'clock in the evening in California. It might be, is it 6 there? Robin is here. Good to see you here. Timmy is lying on the floor just over there. 5 o'clock. Okay. It is 3 o'clock in the morning here. It may seem a bit strange. I said to you something about not being able to do certain times. Unfortunately, my sleep patterns just haven't recovered from the previous lives that I've done. So I do want to stick to doing them on weekends and actually try and do them closer to 2 or 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget the live stream tomorrow dealing with Van Gogh. We'll have a special guest on, and we're going to be sort of dealing with that. Okay, so before I get started, I want to show you the bicycle tire that I mentioned that exploded when I rode. And I don't know if you can see it's quite worn. This tire, although the surface is in really good shape, the side walls are actually quite chewed up. And I'm trying to find the location where it actually popped open. I actually thought it could have been in this valve area, because that is kind of an area of weakness often with bicycle tires. Let's see if I can find it. It's funny, when I picked the tire up, I saw it immediately, and now I'm not seeing it. Let's just see. Can you see how worn the side of it is? I don't know if the camera can pick it up. Can you see how worn that is? So that side is fine, but this side is quite worn. I'm going to make the point I want to make in a moment, but I first just want to show that point where it actually gave in. So weird, I saw it instantly when I picked the tire. Oh, here it is. So I don't know if you can see that. I don't know if you can see that over there, but it's basically just exploded at that point of weakness. But the whole thing is kind of, the guy at the bike shop described the tire as rotten, right? So again, this surface layer is fine, but it's the sidewall that isn't fine. It's this, under the sort of tire itself on the side, that is kind of where the tire was weak and just popped like a balloon, right? Hey, Bria, good to have you here. It is probably the same time in France as it is here, 3 in the morning. I'm sorry to have you up so early, Bria. So what is the significance of something like this tire, right? Timmy, do you want to try and answer the question, Tim? Well, Timmy, what's the significance of a tire like that? Hey, do you know? Timmy, let's see if we can have Sherlock Senior Holmes on the case. Timmy, what do you think is the significance of that? What do you think, Timmy? Okay, so when this tire exploded, it really seemed like, what the heck was that? It's the first time it had ever happened to me. I wasn't riding over a stone. I wasn't riding over glass. I wasn't riding over a rough road. And when you look at this tire, you can see that it was absolutely inevitable that it would happen, because the tire was old, it was perishing, it was really just a question of time. And when I went to replace this tire, they are quite expensive. I replaced the other tire as well. It's a special kind of tire, it's called tubeless. That's kind of a lighter tire, it's used on special rims. I replaced the other tire because that tire on the side facing the road, that was actually quite perished as well. And so you could kind of see that it was a puncture waiting to happen. It's not really even a puncture, it's just the tire eventually giving out. And so when you apply that to true crime and you say, was the relationship, was the marriage, were the family dynamics, was what was going on like a tired old tire? Were there signs of weakness, signs of damage to the relationship? And you might say, yes, there were, but a lot of marriages have signs of wear and tear. Well, the question is the damage serious? Is it serious that you could have a situation like this where you have a sudden failure? And you might think, well, a sudden failure would be unexpected, but it's kind of an expected. It's kind of an expected failure, because you know exactly how weak it is, right, Timmy? You know how weak it is. Okay, so Terry says on cars they will tell you it can't be patched on the sidewall. Same with bikes. Well, that had to be replaced. With bikes, it depends on how serious it is. In terms of that, I mean, you've got to throw that tire away because the whole sidewall is kind of rotten, sort of falling apart. So I'm going to be bringing this up again when we talk about Van Gogh, because it's the same psychology. It is, was Van Gogh's mental health, was Van Gogh's state of mind, was his was the person a worn out old tire that was just about to blow, in terms of him taking his own life, or not? And so I've been trying to make the case that Van Gogh's tire was actually in really good shape, and so something else must have happened, if that makes sense. So we're going to talk about that, but it's a very useful analogy to think about in terms of relationships. A tire degrades slowly. And you may have two people looking at the same tire and seeing, one might say, no, I actually think that tire is in good shape. And that's what I thought, because the outside of that tire looks fairly new even, but the kind of underside of the tire, the part that you don't really think to look at, that was definitely really worn out. So it's really a good analogy if you take it quite far. Okay, so I see we've got about 70 people watching, so I think I'm going to get going. We're going to pick up the narrative of the affidavit on page 12 of 129 pages, so we're only about 10% through. Every time we go through these deep dives, something else comes up. So what we're going to start going through now are the notes from Suzanne Morphew's phone. On July 7th, 2020, FBI computer scientist Brian Turner recovered files from the return of a search warrant on, I'm not sure if it's the Apple iCloud or the phone. I don't think it's the phone itself, because the phone wasn't found. I presume it's the Apple iCloud account for Barry and Suzanne. It's difficult to say for sure because that part is redacted. It does say this file appeared to contain notes. So it was kind of in a notepad sort of section on the phone, and that Suzanne actually wrote to herself. So Suzanne was obviously keeping notes. In the same way, I think, well, this is my opinion, in the same way that I think one could say Nicole Brown Simpson put things in a safety deposit box. She was also keeping a record of things that OJ had done to her. such as those photos of her, right? And I don't know how many people really believe that the photos of her were photos of her wearing makeup showing bruises. I don't know how many of you think that, but she was obviously documenting these things. And so Suzanne Morphew as well. And it says here that Suzanne wrote to herself in her Apple account on or before Friday, May 8th, 2020. The attachment shows that the notes were backed up to the cloud on May 8th, 2020 at 1 minute past 7 to 3 minutes past 7 in the morning. I'm not quite sure what that means. I don't know whether it means that she had added a note and it had backed it up, it had saved it, or whether the system was just designed to automatically back it up. Let's just look at some of your, Kathy says, so did Susan Cox Powell. Okay, so the computer scientist Brian Turner, he said he retrieved notes that contained 60 lines of issues Suzanne had with Barry. Now, I find this quite interesting, but also kind of tragic. She's kind of writing down a list of things she doesn't like about her husband. One kind of gets the idea that she's trying to justify something that she's already resolved to do. So whether she wants to leave him or divorce him or stay on track with not giving Barry another chance, whatever it is, she's written down rationales for why she feels a certain way. And just personally, I kind of find it a little bit immature and a bit juvenile, that you've got to, maybe somebody advised her to do it, but it's the kind of thing I may have done when I was in my 20s, where you're not sure how you feel about something and you're listing the pros and cons. Of course, I'm not in the marriage she was in, and there were a lot of other things going on as well. I've looked at the family dynamics in the video I've just put up. So it may have felt quite complicated to her. She's got daughters, there's the money issue, there are her beliefs, and she's trying to navigate to a kind of a rational conclusion. What is going on? How do I really feel about this person? What should I be doing, right? So yeah, there are like 60 lines of issues with Barry. Now, I see there have been some people worrying about the fact that DV can't be used, and testimony or statements from Sheila Oliver on DV can't be used in court. But if you think about it, what Suzanne has written here in her own words, that I think could suffice or would suffice in that regard. I don't know what you guys think. But anyway, she starts off, these are the lines cited by the computer scientist. It starts off with Monkey app. I'm not really sure what that refers to. There is a footnote here. Monkey app is an application on a phone that can function as a dating website. Okay, so I wonder whether that's the one she mentions first. So I wonder whether she found that app on Barry's phone, this Monkey app. But anyway, that is mentioned first. Then she writes PHYS and then the next word ABUSE. So obviously physical, something's been happening to her. One can imagine that would feature very high on the list if it was something that was happening to her. If it was happening to you, wouldn't you put that near the top of the list if someone was physically hurting you? The Monkey app is actually above that. So if you're trying to read Suzanne's mind, she might be saying the idea of infidelity is even worse than physical maltreatment. or even mental, right? So that's what she mentions first. That's the first thing that comes to mind, this dating app, or this app that could be used as a dating app. It also says here that Suzanne's grievances list included multiple references to Barry controlling the finances. Sorry, I've got a bit of a sneeze. And that actually comes from the recording pen section. So there are actually two separate grievance lists. The one is on the recording pen, and this one is part of the notes. Thanks, Terry. So let's just go through it. It's the monkey app mentioned first. Physical maltreatment, she uses a different word. That's the second one. Mental maltreatment, that's another one. While drinking. I think she's written here New Year's Eve, name calling, said, I only need something for money. So I don't know when this was written, but she's still thinking about New Year's Eve and what was said to her. And she's listing a specific instance where I guess he called her names. Then she mentions women on Facebook, good for business. So I don't know exactly what that refers to. She writes, women on FB dash good for business. Now, the FB, I think most people would agree, probably refers to Facebook. What do you think that means? Now, off the top of my head, I would say it may mean she confronted Barry on all his female friends on Facebook. Oh dear. I hope my voice is gonna last through this live stream. I've already gone through one glass of water. Let me just take a moment. Terry asks, is it woman or woman with an A or woman? Is it plural? It's plural. It's women, plural, on Facebook, good for business. Now, I don't know what you guys think of that, but off the top of my head, I would think she's confronted him. You know, why have you got so many female friends on Facebook? And then, and then he's responded, it's good for business. And I guess what that means is they might hire him to do landscaping, right? I don't know whether it's a snide remark where she, by business check, she means sexual activity. I think that's possible, but I don't think that is likely. I think Barry's response was, well, I'm friends with all these people because it could lead to, you know, he could put up a picture of landscaping and then they could say, oh, can you come do that at my home, kind of thing. That's his explanation. I'm speculating, but do you think that that is true? I think it might be somewhat true here and there, but I think there could also be some other reason behind that, right? So if you think about it, within the first 4 lines, she's referring to infidelity or possible infidelity, or simply Barry being interested potentially in other women or other people in the 2 out of the 4 instances. So of the 4 instances that she's mentioned, 2 refer to this idea of infidelity potentially, and other 2 refer to the way he has been treating her physically and mentally, right? Then the 5th one, lies about deer, pants unzipped. It's quite interesting there. So I don't know what that's about, but only she would know. But again, to draw inference based on what we know from the rest of the affidavit, what we know about Barry, and certainly to some extent intuition, Suzanne seems to feel that Barry has told lies about Dia. And so she might confront him and say, why are your pants unzipped, or why, or where were you, or whatever, and then I think he blames the deer, right? So that could kind of mean anything, lies about deer, pants unzipped, but I suppose it could mean Barry returns home with his pants unzipped, and she says, why are your pants unzipped? And Barry says, well, I was running after a deer, and I guess the zip went open, kind of thing. But if you think about that, just those words, lies about deer, pants unzipped, and you think about what we've gone through in the affidavit so far, Barry has explained certain troubling, suspicious, potentially suspicious evidence. For example, the dart cap and the dart gun and certain weapons being outside of the safe, and saying that he shot at a deer from his driveway, right? That was the one thing he said. He also said he didn't go straight to Broomfield. He took a detour because deer, I think he had to swerve for a deer or something like that. So here is Suzanne making notes that Barry has made lies up about using deer as a kind of excuse for erratic behavior, right? Or behavior that he would otherwise not want to admit, right? And if you think about, he's been caught with his pants down in terms of an affair, not literally his pants down, but his zipper down. And you think about that is a metaphor where in certain aspects of this case, I won't say he's caught with his pants down, but it's certain things that are suspicious. Why is that gun over there? Why is that dart cap lying over there? Why is the safe open, or whatever it is? Why did you go that way, whatever? And then he talks about the deer. And so that certainly is a match in terms of the narrative, from a narrative perspective. Does that make sense? Robbie says, goodness me. Okay, so then she also writes, trip to Colorado, pen on hand. Again, I'm not quite sure what that means. I suppose it could mean that handwriting was written on his hand, like a number or a message or something, and that she noticed that. So that he'd gone to Colorado and but I suppose it could mean anything. Pen on hand, does it mean that he was walking around holding a pen? Did he have a pen on his hand? The way I read that, it's shorthand for, something was written on his hand, kind of thing. But she's listed all of those together. Those seem to be big grievances. It's, I think, 6 of them. So if you think about it, I would say 4 of those 6 are to do with potential infidelity. The monkey app, the woman on Facebook, the lies about the deer and the pants being unzipped, and then the pen on hand, that's a little bit of a less clear one. But seems like the majority of her gripes are to do with his, in her mind, we don't know whether he definitely was unfaithful. That might need to be addressed in court, assuming that it does go to court. The defense keep filing for dismissal. But in terms of this particular affidavit, you have 4 things touching on the idea of infidelity in the first 6 entries. Then she talks about wear bear claw / FaceTime in Arizona angry. I don't know what that is about, but it looks like it just might be about Barry being emotional, Barry being upset in Arizona. The wear bear claw, I'm not quite sure. Don't know whether he was wearing a bear claw and using that as a weapon or kind of brandishing that, but that's the next one. Then stalking Sheila and me in house without telling. Now, if you think about the wear bear claw and the stalking, they seem to broadly take hands with one another, that it's to do with a kind of a hunting thing. You know, you hunt bears, you stalk bears. The next one is lied and said you needed phone to call Casey. So that's the second time lies has come up. Then chased me around resort and threatened, also took phone. So that is also something that is part of the potential fabric of this case is, did Barry chase 85 chipmunks or was he chasing Suzanne, right? Took phone. Also, Suzanne's phone is still missing, just as Gabby Petito's phone, I think, has never been recovered. Then this is quite a big one in terms of some of the allegations. Not safe alone with you, can't be trusted, oppressive, slams on brakes when angry. Now one wonders, does that mean slams on actual brakes when they're driving, or when they're talking, does he say, whoa, 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 and everything's got to stop? One wonders always at both. I suppose a defense could argue that none of this means anything. It's all, you can speculate with all of it. She's not saying Barry lies about the deer pants unzipped. She just writes lies about deer. It could be anyone. Not safe alone with you. It doesn't mean it's to do with Barry. Can't be trusted doesn't mean it's Barry, but what else could it be? What would a reasonable person assume? It's quite a difficult question here because you've got to draw the line between reasonable speculation and I guess reasonable doubt. Anyway, she says not safe alone with you, and isn't that something that turned out to be true? Question mark. Can't be trusted. If that is something she wrote and she was referring to Barry, did that turn out to be true? Did that kind of hold out in the end? Oppressive. What do you think that means? It feels like it means controlling, someone who's suffocating you, someone who's perhaps needy, someone who's not letting you be yourself, someone who is, having you kind of on a leash, someone who's not allowing you to be yourself. Slam on brakes when angry. This is the second time the word angry has come up. So, do you think that Barry is a kind of person who gets angry? Is he a quick to anger person? I wonder what his daughters would say about that. Cotton Star, good to have you here. Cotton Star says Heather Elvis too. Is there Heather Elvis in chat? Or is it Elvis too? Stifled, yeah. Terry says, for some reason, I think I read that he had a bear claw necklace that he only wore for special occasions. That's quite interesting. By the way, did you guys know that Barry had a sister? Did you know that Barry, I think we all know that Suzanne had a sister and Suzanne had a brother, Andy. Did you know that Barry has a sister? Because for me, it's just quite strange that you haven't really heard from his sister until now, and then you see her in this Dateline documentary. Anyway, let's go on to page 13. See, we have already got 30 minutes have passed. It can only be another 90 minutes. We'll get as far as we can go. Apparently, she's written here, threatened to jump out of car, gun. That's quite interesting. As he threatened to use a gun, it's just the word gun on its own. But you kind of get a sense that when she talks about certain things, Barry will, or somebody that she's referring to, is trying to control her by either playing the victim or threatening to hurt himself. And so then she goes on to write shame and guilt daily for not meeting expectations. Now, if you making the defense case and you're saying, you know what, that note means nothing. You could draw anything from that. That note irrelevant. That note argumentative. That note speculative. As you go further and further, and you start taking these notes together, and you look at one like shame and guilt daily for not meeting expectations, do you think you've got to be thinking, who would Suzanne be dealing with on a daily basis? So it's got to be someone she's quite intimate with. So it's got to be someone she's seeing every day. Could it be her daughters making her feel shame and guilt daily? It could be. Could it be the man she's having an affair with? Could be. Could it be her husband? And, you know, are they happily married or not? And then the question is, well, which one is the most likely of those? And I do think, to me, it seems like a fit that Barry had certain expectations of Suzanne based on what Jason Morphew said. And I've just put up a video about that, where Jason Morphew he would tell Suzanne, okay, share your testimony. And then she would dutifully respond, almost like a child being given a tough assignment, right? And so in terms of that, just that description from Jason Morphew, it does seem to be a match in terms of the vibe, this idea of shame and guilt daily for not meeting expectations. What kind of expectations were they? Were they like, according to the Bible, you need to be this kind of wife, you need to obey your husband? What do you think they were? Then she says, nothing to do with infidelity, everything to do with your character and who you are at core. Well, there the word infidelity is actually mentioned. And what do you think she means by that? That she feels shame and guilt daily. Next line, nothing to do with infidelity. What do you think that means? And what I think it means is the shame and guilt she's feeling is actually, it's kind of surprising given that she's quite a strong Christian. She's not feeling any shame or guilt about her infidelity, I'm assuming. I suppose it's possible she might be referring to his infidelity, but it doesn't make sense given the structure here. She says, shame and guilt daily for not meeting expectations, nothing to do with infidelity, which I assume means that shame and guilt has got nothing to do with infidelity, but everything to do with your character and who you are at core. Again, the defense could argue that could mean anything. It could also mean something to do with Jeff Libler. It's got nothing to do with Barry. How can you prove that that's who she's talking about? But if you take it from the perspective where you assume this is about Barry, this is a reference to Barry, and you say, Suzanne's gripe has got everything to do with his character and who he is at the core, who he is as a person. In other words, it could also have nothing to do possibly with her knowledge of his infidelity if it's happening. That her gripe isn't so much to do with whether he's cheated or whether she's cheated, I'm assuming, but to do with how she feels his character actually is. In other words, who he really is as a person. That seems to be her issue here. She says who you are at the core, right? Let's just have a look at some of your comments. Robbie says, added together, they mean a lot. Absolutely. Robbie says the list is about the same person. She would have had a different list for each person. Okay. So keep in the back of your mind. So some of us may feel, I think this is about her husband. What I want you to bear in mind is what the defense would say about certain of these, and also how the prosecution could argue their case based on, is there certainty? How do you not, it's not so much a case of what do you know, but what you can prove, right? Anyway, so she goes on to say, your lack of control over me equals insecurities equals a sick relationship. So this is quite specific, and she seems to be, it can kind of only, it feels like it can only be one of two relationships. It's either a relationship with Barry or it's a relationship with Jeff. I suppose it could be possibly a relationship with her father or father-in-law, but the fact that she's living in Colorado and she's having day-to-day dealings, did she speak to her father every day? Did she speak to other family members every day? Who did she deal with every day? And I think that list is one or two people. You could argue it's her daughters as well, but I think you'd have a tough time selling the idea that her daughters were kind of not treating her very well in the sense of physically, mentally. I don't think people would easily swallow that as an alternative. Anyway, she goes on to say, situation with redacted when I'm in, accuse me of going behind your back. Got up and left, redacted, and me at the table. Left plate, no comment, just to watch TV. Again, that feels like a very intimate, domestic type situation. We were at the table, you left the plate, didn't say anything, just to watch TV. Then she says, act like I'm intruding in the garage. That's a pretty incredible statement as well. If you consider I don't know if it's a fact, but the possibility, the likelihood, the probability, to me is sniffing at my shoe under my chair. Anyway, if you look at this possibility that something happened in the garage, similar to the Chris Watts case, that there was the removal possibly of weapons from the gun safe, also possibly. But anyway, let's just say in general, something seems to have happened in the garage. They also seem to find something that was possibly blood, something that was reddish in color, I guess. I don't know whether it was washed or treated with bleach, that they couldn't confirm that it was blood, but there was certainly the thought that it might be. But anyway, if you just take everything and you say, okay, did something happen in the garage in terms of the evidence after the fact, and this is in the affidavit, you have her actually saying, act like I'm intruding in the garage, which seems to be saying, your behavior makes me feel uncomfortable. I feel like I shouldn't be there when I'm in the garage, which seems to suggest that he's being secretive or things are going on. And think about that. Think about, like, was there a time where someone wanted to do something to Suzanne and then changed their mind? Like with Chris Watts, we know that he did certain things prior to what happened on August 13, with the oxy and all that kind of thing. Tamika, right? So was there a premeditation going on? Was there this idea of, doing something in the garage, and then if Suzanne saw him, he would just put it away, and then, it would be delayed or postponed to another day. I just think it's quite interesting that it seems like she feels like an intruder in the garage. The Oscar Pistorius case is also one where his girlfriend becomes the intruder, who he feels he has every right to shoot. Is there something similar going on here, where you're becoming an intruder in your own home? Well, who's the real intruder? When somebody picks up a gun and shoots someone, who becomes the real intruder, the real enemy, the real criminal in a home situation? So I just think that's quite interesting. It's a pity she didn't write more in terms of these notes, provide more detail. Then she talks about verbal maltreatment. She uses a different word. She talks about writing checks for cash out of business account. So she's quite concerned about the money. Again, do you think that that could be anyone besides Barry? Do you think she's sort of upset about Jeff doing that? I don't think so. Do you think she's upset with her daughters for doing that? I don't think so. And so that can also be demonstrated. You find those checks, and how many were there, and so who's writing those checks. That's how you can determine who this is referring to. Then she also says wiring money from invoice account without asking or discussing. Money in your name only. So here are a string of 3 things dealing with money. Writing checks, wiring money, money in your name only. And right next to that is this thing about being an intruder in the garage. We know the safe was in the garage. We also know substantial amount of money was missing. Was it $70,000? So look at this. Look at all of this in this kind of paragraph. Your lack of control over me, insecurity, a sick relationship. And then it talks about being an intruder in the garage, writing checks. So you have the relationship not working out, then issues over money, and then also she's feeling like an intruder in the garage, right? Then we're close to the end of her note. She talks about pull redacted in hurting her. I don't know really what that refers to at all, but the word hurt stands out. Then she says left 2 times on treatment weeks. I don't know if that means while she was getting cancer treatment, Barry left to go somewhere. I don't know. By the way, this idea of someone being sick or indisposed or whatever has come up before in true crime cases that I've looked at. One of them is Lacey Peterson, where she's pregnant and her husband goes on business trips. There's also, I'm not going to go into it in any detail, but there's also interesting narrative rumors, whatever you want to call it, in the John Benet Ramsey case that Patsy was ill. John would also go on business trips. As I said, I'm not going to take that any further. And then here you have also with Chris Watts, his wife's also pregnant. She's also away, and then he goes on little trips as well, like to the Great Sand Dunes. So you kind of have a situation of someone who's not just, it's like because someone is ill and in some kind of capacity limited in a certain way, as you would be with pregnancy or with cancer, whatever, that then allows the other person the freedom to kind of run around. That is the question to ask here. Was that going on? Is that what she's talking about? Where she says, left 2 times on treatment weeks. Again, it's very vague. Like, what does that actually specifically mean? You'd have to be more specific to take that anywhere. Then she says, bedroom profession about marrying, having babies, and sleeping together. I don't know what that means at all. Do you guys have any ideas? Bedroom profession about marrying, having babies, and sleeping together. But anyway, that has to do with, not actually sure what that means. Don't care about pregnancy possibilities. Hot tub talking to self. I guess what one can really say out of that is it seems to be about either infidelity or just sex. She's talking about having babies and sleeping together, pregnancy possibilities. And I don't think she's thinking about herself in that respect. Hot tub talking to self. I don't quite know what that means. Like, did she overhear him in the hot tub talking? And so the question is, was he on his phone and she was somewhere else? Was that something recorded on the spy pen? But it seems to be another thing that came up. Then the last 3 accused me of BF, boyfriend, and then that part's redacted. There's a footnote there, footnote 20. It says the boyfriend stands for boyfriend, and then inside the footnote, that's also redacted. The something for the cancer medication Suzanne was taking, and 5-6 for May 6, 2020, as confirmed by Barry to FBI agents in interviews in March and April 2021. So, yeah, she actually puts a date, something accused me of a boyfriend and something on the 6th of May. So 4 days before she disappeared, possibly died, possibly murdered. 4 days before that, Barry or somebody accused her of having a boyfriend. Again, who do you think that was? Who would accuse her of having a boyfriend? Then wrote in Al-Anon book, knew I was looking at phone in bonus. Knew I was looking at phone in bonus. Phone in bonus. Not quite sure what that means. And that is it. That's the end of the notes from Suzanne. I think you've kind of got to ask 2 or 3 basic questions. The one is, who do you think she's talking about? And how reasonable can you be that it's someone specific? So if you say, I think it's Fred, what are the chances it is Fred? Is it 30%, 60%, 80%, right? Is it very likely? Is it possible? Or is it unlikely, right? And how relevant is this to the circumstances? Now, given what has happened with this case so far, the prosecution will need to make a strong case with this. They'll need to think about their narrative. They'll need to stitch and link, tie with strings all of these comments to facts. And in a way, the way I've done it, but I would take a bit more time to anchor it in things that are provable and say, well, here are 50 statements and they are anchored in 50 facts, kind of thing, right? And really emphasize that. Now we go to a May 6, 2020 message to Barry, and we all kind of aware of this. Pursuant to an authorized search warrant, Barry's Verizon phone was searched by FBI examiner Jim Stevens, who found an image that Barry likely swiped the message off his screen, and swiped image was inadvertently saved. This is really interesting. In fact, I don't know, I find it quite fascinating. I wonder if I can move my chair away from there. Okay. And so what they're saying is that looks like Barry inadvertently saved an image, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't an image he wanted to save. And I find that quite interesting with true crime. You often think about true crime where there's a lot of effort to, you've committed a crime, you've left evidence behind, then you go and you try and clean it up. But cleaning up the evidence often leaves evidence. I always say the absence of evidence is also evidence, but you could also say the evidence of cleaning evidence is also evidence, right? And which is why I always say, look out for someone doing the laundry in the middle of a crime scene. Look out for, I think another big one these days is someone deleting messages and a lot of messages, given that a crime appears to have occurred. And you look at Chris Watts, how many photos and whatnot he transfers to his secret calculator app, right? All of this covering up is a sign of something. And it's often a sign of what I call post-meditation. You do certain things with premeditation, you also do certain things with post-meditation, and they hold hands with one another. Just look at some of your comments here. Could she have meant bedroom confession? Bonus room? Thanks, Scott and Star. Let's look at that again. Yeah, because she does sometimes she writes without thinking in a way. Bedroom profession about marrying, having babies, and sleeping together. That could be bedroom confession about marrying, having babies, and sleeping together. That's also difficult to say. Is that something that Barry did? Did Barry confess to all of that? Or bear in mind, to profess something is also something. You can profess to love someone. Did she overhear something? Did he overhear something? I don't know. Terry says she might be using the description words bedroom, hot tub, bonus room to remind her of the locations these incidents occurred. Yeah. I think it's unfortunate, and I think if you're watching this and you are in a similar situation, it's important to be very clear about what has happened to you, right? Whether or not a similar outcome happens to you. God forbid that it would, but if you wanted to take this to divorce court, you'd need more detail around what was said when and all those details, if that makes sense. Your narrative needs to be more concise, more detailed, more fact-based. You need things like times, dates, all that kind of thing. Okay, so anyway, it goes on to say, this message was not recovered separately in Suzanne's phone or Barry's phone. The image appears to be a message from Suzanne to Barry. This is really important. It's a message that seems to be from Suzanne to Barry. It says Suzanne above the message. And instead of it being deleted, it was apparently photographed by accident. And then it goes on to say, the date of this message, this is also so important, the timing of it. I also kind of want to ask my patrons if they want me to cover the Ukraine war on YouTube and in more detail. The timing of crimes are so important. The day that it happens, the time of day that it happens, the context. Timing is one of the big pillars in which we figure out true crime. The timing of this particular case is also very important. A lot of people think it's Mother's Day is the big giveaway, but it's actually other events that were playing out over a long period of time. And that leads to this tire degrading, as I mentioned earlier. What causes the marriage to deteriorate in a serious way, and then what causes it to literally explode? Both those things you need to know the answer to. And often it can be not money, but large amounts of money, and not infidelity, but kind of a perceived sense of serious infidelity. And so, for example, someone might treat infidelity is always horrible and heartbreaking, but for some people it's more unbearable than for others. Especially if you think of yourself as a hero and you do nothing wrong and you're perfect, and your belief in God is going to protect you and going to keep your partner faithful, then when there is infidelity, that might be more shocking than if you perhaps have a more secular view and you know what I'm saying. So some of those things can create a scenario allowing the tire to be more, I don't want to say undermined, but more weakened than it would otherwise be. You must not take it, you shouldn't sort of go, well, that kind of infidelity wouldn't bother me. The question is, would it bother him? Also, that kind of money issues wouldn't be a big deal to me. No. Would it bother that person in that situation? If it's your inheritance, you might say, no, it's money is money. Inherited money has got a different kind of aspect to it. On the one hand, it's easy come, easy go. On the other hand, it's saved up life that is giving you the chance to have a new life. And it might be giving someone ideas, oh, I could have a new life with that money. And you also have inheritance money in the Scott Peterson case. Okay, let's look at some of your points here. Cotton Star says, all staged homicides have some sort of preceding conflict between the victim and stager/offender. Absolutely. Cotton Star goes on to say, Susan had a major conflict with Barry. Murder is conflict resolution. It does feel like there was a big conflict over, I don't know whether the big gripe was infidelity or money or both, but it certainly, either one on their own could have been a pretty big gripe. Kathy says, I was interested in your Putin comments. I don't know, I just feel like I think true crime's got to be relevant, and you can see a lot of analogies between criminality and kind of war, right? And I think it's something we need to be thinking about because it's quite important. Marie Stock, wow, I think that's one of the biggest super chats I've ever gotten. Thanks a lot, Marie. Really appreciate that. Thank you. Bria, yeah, thanks a lot. Okay, so let's go on. We already haven't gotten far, and we're already almost at the halfway mark. We had about an hour. So the timing of this is so important, right? This is so important. And again, you've got to ask yourself, what do you think Barry thought when he saw this? Did Barry panic? No, it's not only this text in isolation. It's the text within the context of someone who has debt, who owes Suzanne money, affairs, divorce, you built a new house, you've overextended yourself. A lot of the issues in the Chris Watts case here as well. You also saw similar texts, dramatic texts in the phone data review. A lot of people still haven't bothered to go through those systematically. I've gone through the entire phone data review in great detail. And then when you go through it, the outcome isn't really that surprising. It feels inevitable. We don't have the luxury of that here. We don't have a huge amount of text, but we do have this very, very important text. I mean, if Barry intended for one text to be deleted, above all, it probably is this one. And it reads, I'm done. I could care less what you're up to and have been for years. We just need to figure this out civilly, right? And I don't think, although it's not absolutely explicit what she's talking about, I think you're an idiot if you're going to say, I've got no idea what that's about. What could he be talking about? Marie, thanks very much. I watch you all the time. It's only right, isn't it? Thank you. So when she says I'm done, what do you think she's talking about? She's talking about she's done with the marriage, isn't she? Those are the same words that Shanann Watts used with Chris Watts, saying, I think she said, I'm done in terms of his parents with the Nutgate incident, right? And those words express finality. There's going to be no more negotiation, no more argument, no more peacekeeping, no more making up. It's basically saying that is it, right? And it's not the first time I think that she's saying I've had enough. I think she said it quite a few times already. But this is kind of, and the other thing is you get some people that might say I'm done 100 times, whereas you get someone else who's quite a passive person, quite a kind, warm, sweet person who never uses this language. And so when you see this language, you actually know the game is up. It is over. Do you know what I mean? And think about how strong this language is. I'm done. I could care less what you're up to and have been for years. That's an accusation at the same time. She's saying, I don't even care. You don't need to explain to me what you haven't done. I don't want to hear the excuses. I don't actually even care anymore because I'm done. And she's also saying, I've known about this for years. Oops, from the person who's the recipient. And then where she says, we just need to figure this out civilly, she's already communicating that she's graduated to the point where she's saying, not that I'm thinking of getting a divorce or that I'm thinking of this. I've already made up my mind. I'm done. Right? I know who you are and I'm done. That's the position that she's taking. And this takes place 4 days before she disappears. Coincidence? Question mark. Now, I've heard a lot of people saying, and I did put up a YouTube video saying, is Barry winning or is he winning, right? And, there's just no evidence, blah, 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 blah. And I think it's quite easy to get into the wrong frame of mind here, where you say, the fact that Suzanne Morphew's disappeared and no one's found her and that there are no remains, that is to Barry Morphew's benefit, right? To me, it's the opposite. To me, it's like, can you explain, as the closest person to your wife, where she is? And also, you should be able to explain that, shouldn't you? You should be able to explain what is going on with your own wife and why she's just disappeared, right? So to me, the onus is far more, again, the absence of evidence is evidence. Not only has Suzanne disappeared under these fraught circumstances, but without a trace. She didn't just disappear and, there was a sign of her here and there and there. Usually when someone disappears like that, it kind of means they are no longer alive. It's a big argument with the Madeleine McCann case. Is the person not making a peep? Are they completely silent because they are just sort of hiding away in a corner and they know what's going on, but they're just hiding away? Who would believe that? No one believed that in the Patrick Frazee case. In the John Benet Ramsey case, was John Benet playing hide and go seek? That's why nobody could find her, or was she no longer alive? And that's just where she's disappeared for a few hours. Thanks a lot, Cotton Star. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to CrimeCon in Vegas because I did apply and I haven't heard back from them. So I assume that they don't think I'm credible or I haven't reached a certain point yet. But who knows, maybe next year or maybe London. Anyway, let's go back to this. So to me, you can push everything aside. You can just really push all we know about the Morphew case aside, everything, and say, yeah, we have a text from Suzanne to her husband, a text that her husband, I think, tried to delete, right? This message was not recovered separately in Suzanne's phone or Barry's phone. The image appears to be a message from Suzanne to Barry. The date, May 6, 2020 at 10:13 a.m. It wasn't written in the middle of the night when she was sleep deprived or early in the morning. It is written when she would have been compos mentis, right? And it is the finality of this message in the context to her disappearing a few days later. That is what stands out. I'm done. I could care less what you've been up to. We just need to figure this out civilly. And think about those words in context. When Suzanne was done, didn't somebody else also decide, you know what, I'm also done. I'm done trying to make this work. I'm done begging for money, whatever. Then she says, I could care less what you're up to. Maybe somebody thought, I wonder whether people are going to care about Suzanne if she disappears. Are her family going to disappear? Are her family going to care? And we didn't really hear from her family for a really long time. Are people going to care or know about what has happened if that evidence is removed? And then she says, we need to just figure this out civilly. Do you think Barry wanted to? Do you think Chris Watts wanted to? Do you think Patrick Frazee wanted to? Figure this out civilly. How are we going to break? Do you think Brian Laundrie wanted to figure this out civilly? So now we go to page 14. I'm just going to read this. Upon the recovery of Suzanne's spy pen, Special Agent Grusing and Special Agent Kenneth Harris began prioritizing anyone named Jeff in Suzanne's social media, phone records, or other accounts. So they didn't find out about Jeff from, hi, Margaret, welcome. They didn't find out about Jeff from Barry. So I think a really interesting question legally is, did Barry know about Jeff, right? I'm talking about before she disappeared. Did Barry know about Jeff? If Barry did know about Jeff, did he tell the authorities about Jeff? If Barry knew about Jeff and Barry didn't tell the authorities about Jeff, why didn't he? And you have the same scenario possibly as with Chris Watts. Was Chris Watts having an affair? Was Chris Watts having an affair with a co-worker? Was Chris Watts having an affair with a co-worker called Nicole Kessinger? If Chris Watts was having an affair, why didn't he say that he was having an affair, given that his wife disappeared? It's that thing. So I think it's a very important legal question. Did Barry volunteer that his wife was seeing Jeff, or we knew about it? Did he know about it? Does Jeff think he knew about it? Or was it just that he suspected she was unfaithful to somebody in general, kind of thing? Did Barry ever caught Suzanne talking to Jeff, or vice versa? So anyway, it goes on to say, on the pen, Suzanne spoke to an unknown male named Jeff while she was in Florida, as if he was her lover, but no last name or phone number was provided. After months so one wonders, was she saying that, it's a recording, was she saying that while she was talking to Barry? Anyway, it says, after months of investigation and after working through a list of about 20 or more Jeffs, possibly associated with Suzanne, Jeff Libler, a former high school friend of Suzanne, was identified and interviewed. Libler provided the following information. This is quite important. On November 4, 2020, Special Agent Grusing and Special Agent Harris spoke with Libler on the phone and recognized his voice as being the voice on Suzanne's pen recording. After discussing his relationship with Suzanne and Libler talking about the secret meetings, he asked to continue the interview in person. He said after he learned Suzanne went missing, he figured there was no way she's alive. He said he's not proud about not coming forward and giving reasons to agents that he has 6 kids and a wife and he will lose his job. So in a way, a similar situation with Nicole Kessinger, afraid of the opprobrium of the public, afraid of the scandal, afraid of losing her job, and she did. She lost her home as well. Him saying he's not proud about it. Well, if you think about it, this crime happened in May 2020, right? And the cops only tracked down Jeff Libler by November. So that's basically, let's say, June, July, August, September, October. So it took 5 months for the police to track down Jeff Libler. And one just wonders, if they didn't track him down, would he ever have come forward? And let's say he wouldn't have come forward, right? Then you say, more months go by and Barry is never charged and nothing ever happens. So you have a situation where someone who had an affair with Suzanne and believe that she's dead just doesn't come forward because he's embarrassed. In other words, aren't you enabling a murder? Aren't you? I don't want to put it as strongly as, what do they call it? Being an accessory, but doesn't it kind of amount to that, where you know a lot, you have a lot of very important information to the investigation, the police are asking over and over again, we need information, please, the public come forward, but you just don't come forward. And that's the difference between Nicole Kessinger and Jeff Libler. Nicole Kessinger did come forward. Nicole Kessinger came forward quickly, and Chris Watts was dealt with quickly. Do you have that in this case? And I'm sure Jeff Libler isn't seen in nearly the same negative light as Nicole Kessinger. And I think a valid question to ask is, did Jeff Libler look at what happened to Nicole Kessinger and say, whoa, I'm not going to make the same mistake. I'm not going to put up my hand and say, hey, I had an affair and it led to murder, or it may have led to murder. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just get back under my stone and just watch how things, and that's the lesson I learned. And that is the result, I think. Possibly, I don't know whether what I'm speculating is true, but that is the result of the witch hunt against Nicole Kessinger. Is in future, someone who's in a situation that can help the authorities learns that they're going to get so scorned by the public that I'm not going to help at all, because I'm going to pay a very, very heavy price. I'm going to be treated almost worse than the killer. So that's the lesson that somebody learns given what has happened. Do you think that's a good lesson? Do you think it's right that he should come forward? Well, if he comes forward, he should be treated in an appropriate way. But I do agree, it feels a bit like a betrayal of Suzanne that's almost worse than what actually happened to her by her killer. So anyway, going back to this, it's just Libler said when this happened, he thought Suzanne was abducted, so he kept quiet. He stated time went by and he did not want her girls to find out. He does not think Barry knew about him and Suzanne or what set him off, other than the fact that the guy could be easily set off by anything, you know. So those were his words. Again, you've got to say, well, that is being asserted here. How is there a pattern to this behavior? So let's just say this again. According to Barry, according to this affidavit, the guy could be easily set off by anything. And what that is suggesting is someone kind of with a hair-triggered temper, someone who has a bad temper, someone who can probably be in a good mood one moment and a bad the next. Someone who is perhaps a bit erratic emotionally, someone who's perhaps a bit insecure. And then they say, he says, I'm sure you guys know that, meaning I'm sure you guys know that things can set this guy off. That is really the question, is can they prove that there's this pattern of someone who loses his temper, someone who gets angry? Now, we know in her list that she refers to him getting angry and hitting the brakes. So we're getting some reinforcement possibly for that as well. So anyway, Libler said he did not feel like he had anything to add and did not want to hurt anybody. I think one could maybe add to that is that he didn't want to hurt himself. I think Libler's part in this story is actually a very important part. It's one of the, if there are three pillars to the story, in other words, Suzanne is one pillar, Barry is another, or somebody else if it's not Barry, and then the third pillar is Jeff. Like I say, when you're talking about a situation like this, you look at the tire and what is wearing the tire down, what is weakening it. And if you take Jeff out of it, then what are you left with? That they don't really have a great marriage, right? Do you see what I'm saying? You need to know the details, the proper details for what is undermining relationships. In the John Benet Ramsey case, what's undermining relationships in that family, right? And you could argue that it's the obsessive attention that Patsy's giving her daughter. What effect is that having on somebody else who's not getting that attention, who wants that attention, right? And you can't fill in that family dynamic if you take away the infidelity. So although Jeff says he doesn't feel like he had anything to add, well, he did. He had a lot to add. On November 13, 2020, Special Agent Grusing and Special Agent Harris interviewed Libler in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Libler said that after Suzanne's first message of "Howdy, stranger," so Suzanne did reach out to him, right? She reached out to him in 2018, and then he reciprocated, and they began talking on the phone. Libler said he was nervous to talk to agents, and what he did was disgraceful. In the summer after Libler's first year in college in Indiana, he attended a party with some friends at Suzanne's house. Barry and Suzanne were a couple, but Barry was not at the party. Libler said he and Suzanne kind of hooked up, not really at the party. So you kind of have a situation here where previously in their backstory, Suzanne and Jeff were kind of had a fling while she was in a relationship with Barry. And I'm just putting this out there as something to think about. If Barry has had all these flings and infidelities, I don't know if it's true, but she does say, I could care less what you've been up to and have been for years. So if that is based on something, then you may have a scenario where Barry's been married but having lots of kind of infidelities, and Suzanne is kind of feeling like, I would like one. Like, I am not happily married. I would like to have one affair. I would like to be in one. I would just like to be with somebody. In other words, have one affair, right? And she may justify that based on somebody else having multiple affairs. Whether it's true or whether it's in her mind, that is maybe what's going on. And so she may have gone thinking, well, you know what? Somebody who allowed me to do this, it's not very, very good what I'm doing. I'm cheating. But somebody who did this in the past was Jeff. Maybe we can do it again. And that intuition proved to be sound, I think, because it had happened before, and the best predictor of the future, of future possibilities, is the past, right? Stephanie says, sorry, I'm late. Didn't think I was going to make any of tonight. Stephanie, I think, good to have you here, first of all. I think I'm only going to be here for another 40 minutes at most. We really haven't gotten that far. There are a lot of pages to go through. I'm really only at the bottom of page 3. So, where was I? Let's just go back up. So, Suzanne and Barry were a couple. Barry wasn't at this party, and they kind of hooked up. I don't know what that means. They held hands, smooched, I don't know, but something happened. Libler played golf almost daily at the time, and Barry worked on the golf course. Barry found out about Libler and Suzanne hooking up at the party. Now, that is a really important point. So, the question is, in Barry's mind, would Jeff have been a possible candidate for Suzanne to be mixed up in? I don't know what the answer is to that. I mean, we know that they were together. The question is, would Barry have put 2 and 2 together? If he had put 2 and 2 together, bear in mind, I think he sent a text about the boyfriend. Do you have a boyfriend? Why didn't he tell the police about that? And shouldn't Jeff have been someone that, if Barry was just putting down a list of possible suspects for himself, wouldn't that have been someone to mention? Did he mention other guys? I don't know. Just something for the police, I guess, to address, and the prosecutor. Anyway, he said Barry found out about Libler and Suzanne hooking up at the party. Upon seeing Libler on the golf course, Barry jumped off the tractor and he was ready to beat me down. Libler told Barry, you're going to lose your job. You're going to lose everything. Libler talked him out of it, and that was the last interaction Libler had with Barry. So there you kind of get a sense of a specific incident where Libler actually experiences Barry being angry and also, I guess, kind of physical. On the one hand, you could say that's kind of justified. Maybe boyfriend should take that kind of action. On the other hand, you could say it's quite excessive. Libler said he did not talk to Suzanne until 2018 following that night in Indiana. He explained, I tell her I carried a torch for her all that time. Libler and Suzanne used FaceTime to communicate in 2018, though Libler's daughter saw one of their communications in late 2018, and Libler told Suzanne they had to stop. So they had quite a lot of interactions. Libler's own daughter saw something. The question is, didn't Suzanne's daughter see something? Didn't something get conveyed to Barry? They did not speak until around Christmas 2018 because Libler deleted Facebook, Instagram, and all messaging between him and Suzanne. Kind of a similar situation with Nicole Kessinger, deleting all that social media. Around Christmas 2018, Suzanne found Libler's LinkedIn account, and so Libler deleted all of these things, and then Suzanne kind of persisted and contacted him through LinkedIn, sent a message with the words to the effect of, I'm worried, sick about you, are you okay? Libler responded to the message, and they began talking again, first in a platonic way, and then their relationship progressed again. Libler said they communicated through FaceTime but did not physically see each other in 2018. This is, again, why I say the timing is so important. The affair with Jeff Libler gained momentum, picked up speed. There was far more interaction and things going on in 2019. And when did she die? When did Suzanne disappear? When did all of this happen? Well, within months of the affair kind of starting. With Nicole Kessinger, when did Shanann and the kids lose their lives? Right? In the context to the when of the affair. Does that make sense? Suzanne and Libler communicated regularly from late 2018 through May 9, 2020, right? So basically from throughout 2019 and then into early 2020, she communicated with him until I think the night that she died. And if someone was deleting things on Suzanne's phone, wouldn't that person have seen these interactions? If someone knew to delete messages, wouldn't they have seen these interactions? Let's just look at some of your comments. Stephanie says yes. Cotton Star, are you going to CrimeCon? Because it looks like Stephanie is going. Breaks, interrupts. Now I think it would amount to interrupting. Nisi. Okay, so let's go on here. So I said to you earlier that those 50 points that Suzanne made, the defense could say this could be about anybody. And if Jeff Libler never came forward, you could have, I wouldn't say a strong case, but you could have a kind of a stronger case to say, it's just somebody's random thoughts, and maybe she was not even sober when she wrote them down. This stuff really doesn't mean anything. But when you bring Jeff Libler into the story, suddenly a lot of those things fit together a lot better and make a lot more sense. For example, what does it say here? Libler and Suzanne met each other in New Orleans, Florida, Indianapolis, Michigan, Dallas, and again in Florida during the last 5 trips. They stayed in hotels, talked and shared meals, and had consensual sex. Libler had not traveled to Colorado to see Suzanne, partly because Suzanne said Barry has surveillance cameras that are all around the house. Libler also told agents on November 13, 2020 that he was last in Colorado when he visited Denver in 2016. So they probably wanted to know what are your whereabouts. Let's exclude you. Do you have an alibi? Let's exclude you as a potential suspect. Libler said, here's what she told me about a relationship with Barry. Not good, lots of fights, very argumentative, felt like it was horrible for her health mentally. So here's confirmation from another party, and you could argue that he's biased, that he's got a reason to say certain things against Barry, but nevertheless he says, he confirms what Suzanne seems to be saying, not good, lots of fights, very argumentative. Libler asked Suzanne if she felt afraid that Barry would hurt her, and she answered, he would never cross that line. He's learned. So it's quite interesting that Libler actually asked that question. And I don't know, one's got to think about her answer. She says he would never cross that line, but didn't he? Like when she talks about in those notes, isn't that referring to crossing certain lines? Maybe she means like in a fatal way, in a permanent way. Anyway, Libler took that to mean something happened physically one time to Suzanne where Barry maybe shoved her or hit her. That's the assumption that he makes, according to the affidavit. Agents asked Libler when Suzanne first said she loved him, and he replied she told him that in 2018. Same thing in the Chris Watts case. It wasn't just that they had an affair, but there was a feeling, a perception of genuine love between these people having an affair. And that's something that I think is very underestimated by a lot of people, is how upset would you be if someone's having an affair compared to someone's having an affair and they really love this person. That they're not just leaving you because they don't like you, they've met someone that they love and that's really working out, kind of thing, right? They discussed that they were soulmates and meant for each other. I must say, you must look at all of this, you say you love one another, you are soulmates, you're meant for each other. Something happens to one of you and then the other person just goes right back to their lives, doesn't look after you in your absence, doesn't stand up for you when you don't have a voice, doesn't, a friend of mine was horribly killed in a bicycle accident, right? And I feel, I think the next trial date is in April. I want to be in court to feel satisfied that justice happens and that the appropriate things happen in that person's case, right? And I'm not really involved in that to the extent that Jeff was, and yet Jeff just wants to kind of go on with his life. I don't know. It's just, to me, unbelievable the vitriol and venom that Nicole Kessinger has gotten, and she came forward, compared to Jeff Libler, who nobody ever talks about, and he didn't come forward. I don't know. It's just crazy. Libler explained they were soulmates because of their approaches to the world and to people. They exchanged words of love to each other. Libler said that Suzanne treated people well, not simply for social stair climbing or status benefits. Libler was striving to be that type of person. You also got that impression from Jason Morphew in the article that he did for the Daily Beast, where he said they were sitting in the lounge and Suzanne was just a warm, kind, generous, nice person. Libler said that he was not a good person, and I seem to remember Nicole Kessinger saying the same. they were sort of buttering her up to make a statement, and she said, "I'm not a good person." Chris Watts also did the same. Anyway, he said he was horrible for having this relationship with Suzanne. I don't know. I don't think the horrible thing is that. I think the horrible thing is Suzanne disappearing in a way, possibly because of him and him not kind of being conscientious and standing up for her with her not being there. What if she had run away? What if she was out there? Oh, I'm still going to just stay in wherever I am, kind of twiddle my thumbs. So it just seems a bit of a double standard. A woman who has an affair gets absolutely slaughtered by other women. When a man does the same thing, yeah, it's just normal. I don't know. It's just, anyway. When agents asked Libler how Suzanne took steps to be careful about Barry knowing her travel activities, he said when Barry called, Libler left the room. When Barry called, Libler left the room. So there were times where Barry would call Suzanne and she would be with Jeff. And, would the suspicion come up that she was with Jeff? Well, what if Barry had access to the iCloud? Anyway, it says, this happened once in Suzanne's hotel room in New Orleans. Agents asked Libler what other steps they took to conceal their relationship from Barry. In other words, they're trying to find out, did Barry know about Jeff, which is a very important point, legal-wise, prosecution-wise, law enforcement-wise, because it goes potentially to motive. He responded, we talked all the time about protect for the kids, for family, all that stuff. Suzanne knew when Libler was going to be working in his car, and he never initiated conversation with a phone call or a text. They communicated through his LinkedIn account in 2019 to determine when they could FaceTime. So LinkedIn was the one way, FaceTime was the other. Agents asked Libler if Suzanne ever spoke about leaving Barry. He said Suzanne's plan was to get out of the house and to college before Suzanne would probably go on her own. He said Suzanne's plan was to get out of the house. I think what he means there is Suzanne's plan was to get the kids out of the house and in college, and then she would go on her own, something like that. Not expressed very well. Libler and Suzanne talked about one day being together. She told Libler this was not about him, it's about her getting away. He said Suzanne was not happy mentally and she could not take it and it was wearing her out. What did I just say about this? Right? So this is a worn out tire that eventually exploded, right? And here you have it in the affidavit. It's Suzanne's own words. She's saying, I'm worn out, right? In the context of leaving the marriage. She told Libler this was not about him, it was about her getting away, right? She could not take it and it was wearing her out, right? And if things are allowed to wear out and wear out and wear out, what do you think happens? And so the other side to bear in mind is not just Suzanne that's feeling worn out, it's also the other side of that equation. Barry's feeling worn out. And what does Barry do when he's worn out? What does Barry do when he's not happy? So in the Chris Watts case, Chris Watts is getting worn out with his marriage and his kids. That's his perception. Shanann is getting worn out, but Nicole Kissinger is also getting worn out by when are you actually going to leave? And then what is the result of that? What's the result of this wear and tear on these relationships? What's happening? Who's going to do something about it and what are they going to do? What causes this worn out relationship to actually, right? Just remember, this is a case that is being tested in the courts. There's actually another motion for a dismissive. It is innocent until proven guilty. We're looking at the evidence. We're just saying what is certain evidence that one side could use, what is evidence that another side could use. So she said, I can't take it and it's wearing me out. Libler had a corporate LinkedIn account and he created a second account to use to communicate with Suzanne. They stopped talking on the phone in December 2019. That's quite significant. So usually that happens when there's been a slip up somewhere. So in December 2019, they both stopped talking on the phone and Suzanne disappears 4 months later. Libler deleted his second LinkedIn account after Suzanne disappeared when he thought she was abducted. Now, what's quite interesting here is Libler deletes everything, social media gone, including his LinkedIn. Even Suzanne's sister deleted Suzanne's last text to her sister. Isn't that great for Barry? Isn't that great for the situation? Great. Thanks so much for, I've been deleting stuff. Thank you for you deleting as well. Thanks. Thanks a lot. And so, I think to be fair, you've also got to ask yourself, if you were a sidekick or a sideshow pony to a potential murder investigation, and you knew the police were going to look at your data, would you delete all of it? So it's one thing to say that was wrong, help the investigation. Would you? Should you? Could you? We hope the answer is yes, but I think we know the answer is maybe, maybe not. Or maybe I would delete some of the stuff, or maybe I would archive some of the stuff, or maybe I would get a lawyer and control the stuff. Look at what Alec Baldwin has just done. Look how long it took him to hand over his phone. Would you hand your phone over immediately, no questions asked, or not? Some people maybe would, some people maybe wouldn't. Some people with certain conditions. If you say, I'm a good person, I would just give my phone and no questions asked. Well, look at what happened to Nicole Kessinger. You don't want to become Nicole Kessinger, kind of thing. And I don't think Jeff Libler did. Okay, so going on, Libler deleted his second LinkedIn after Suzanne disappeared. Libler said, I didn't want her legacy to be she had an affair with this guy. Not sure what I think about that. Anyway, Libler and Suzanne stopped. So did you want her legacy to be that she just disappears, nobody knows, unknown, unresolved, no closure, investigation, frustrated, and just peters out into nothing, cold case? Is that going to be your legacy? Libler and Suzanne stopped talking over the phone in December 2019 because she told him, we can't use the phone anymore. Very important. She told him, not he told her, she told him. We can't use the phone anymore. Why? She said, Barry watches everything I do and I'm afraid he's gonna find out. Barry's watching everything she's done, everything she's doing. Did he find out? Suzanne mentioned an incident when she was on the beach in Mexico listening to music on her phone and Barry was suspicious of her. Libler said she started handing her phone over to him and told him, do whatever you want, go through it. So Barry is going through her phone. Does he ever find anything? Does he find Jeff's name? Does he find anything? He's suspicious, he's searching, they are communicating. Does he find something? Libler and Suzanne used WhatsApp because they could talk and leave messages, but there was no phone record of it. So there's another way that they were communicating regularly, but there's no phone record of it. Libler did not think there would be call records of them talking past December 2019. In October 2019, Libler had a sales meeting in Dallas and Suzanne was traveling to Phoenix. She left a day early and went through Dallas, staying at the same hotel Libler stayed, the Galleria in northern Dallas with the ice rink inside. They spent 2 nights at the hotel together. Suzanne was going to the Phoenix conference to become a certified fitness instructor with the mindset of, what am I going to do if I leave him? Who do you think him refers to? She talked to Libler about Barry's moods and anger. The word anger comes up again, saying, as long as he gets what he wants, everything's fine. Something that I think she's also said to Sheila. And so the question is, as long as he gets what he wants, everything's fine. What happens when he doesn't get what he wants? What does everything's not fine mean when he doesn't get what he wants? Libler said he and Suzanne had a mutual understanding not to dive too much into the problems they had with their spouses. So apparently Libler also had a problem. But as far as I know, I think they're still together, aren't they? Libler knew Suzanne had discussions with somebody in March or April about separating from Barry and getting a divorce. I think I know who that refers to, but I'm not going to mention it here. We're on the bottom of page 15 of 129. Suzanne told Barry, I just want peace, explaining she wanted it to be peaceful for the girls, meaning she wanted the divorce to be peaceful. And we know that from the last text. Let's do it civilly. What does she say? We just need to figure this out civilly. And isn't that what Chris Watts felt with Shanann? He also wanted a divorce. He had actually communicated he wanted a divorce. But do you think it was going to be civil? Given that Nutgate had happened, do you think it was going to be a civil divorce? Do you think the divorce would be all over Facebook? Do you think if Shanann found out about Nicole Kessinger, given what happened with Nutgate, it was going to be a civil, oh, are you having an affair with that person? You want to get divorced? Okay, that's fine. Okay, let's get things going. Let me help you out with that. Or do you think something else would happen? Do you think Shanann would contact Nicole and say, give her a piece of her mind? Do you think Shanann knowing about Nicole would mean the end of the affair? Libler thought that in January 2020, February 2020, Suzanne was wanting to break out on her own, but still wanted to wait until somebody graduated. So that has come up more than once. We're getting, with true crime, you tend to have a situation where you may have a theory. You may say, this is starting to look like that. And as you get more and more information, you're going to get more and more reinforcement, more and more things from all sorts of areas that create a kind of a funnel that goes towards a certain point. In other words, all of these things coming together that are strengthening this idea that you had, right? Not just one or two things strengthening it, but lots and lots and lots of things that come together, come to a point. Either that happens, or you have a theory and then nothing supports it. It's like, I think that happened, and then one thing might support maybe another thing, but then it peters out. That often happens in true crime. So yeah, you have a situation where there's this idea of divorce, this idea of imminent divorce, and all these forces that are playing on it. Financial, the girls, this affair, not communicating anymore, that text, this, that, and the next thing. And so Libler said, Libler said Suzanne felt some shame that she had so much materially. So Suzanne felt quite embarrassed that she had so much money. She had so much resources at her disposal. And she spoke with Libler about life transformation. Barry held the huge houses and Range Rovers over Suzanne's head. So it seems like Barry's like the self-righteous guy saying, you know what, it's harder for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to go to heaven. And look at all your money. You should be giving your money away. You should be giving it to me. I need it. So blah, blah, blah. So he was holding this over her, the big house, the Range Rover. Barry told her things like, quote, I provide these things for you. You have the greatest life. You have everything. $1 million home. You have Range Rovers. Libler said they never made concrete plans, but she told him several times when she does leave Barry, she would go without contacting Libler for a while. Suzanne said she was not doing this for Libler, but for herself. So Barry is telling her, I'm providing these things for you. You've got the greatest life. You've got everything. But is Barry really providing it? Who's actually providing these things? I wonder, and probably some people won't like me saying this, but I wonder whether one can make the same argument with, so Suzanne and Barry are married, but Suzanne wants to not be married. Barry wants to stay married. Chris Watts and Shanann are married, but Chris Watts doesn't want to be married, but Shanann does want to stay married, right? Does Shanann say to Chris Watts, we've got such a great life. We've got this big house. We've got all of these things, you know, we're thriving. We've got these nice cars. We've got this beautiful family. None of these things seem to really matter in terms of, because what's going on with Chris Watts and what's going on with Suzanne, I think, was this idea of, yes, but it's all fake and the money doesn't really mean anything to me. I want a real life. I want a real relationship. I want a real family. And I'm not in this because I want a big house. Maybe you are. I'm not in this because of a flashy car. Maybe you are. I want a real relationship that makes me come alive. That's what I want, right? So Suzanne's talk of leaving Barry was like a wave with like a higher frequency of waves. Libler said Suzanne had faith God would provide for her and she would figure it out. Libler did not know she had an inheritance until he read about it in the media. That's quite interesting. So it's almost like Libler, like Suzanne, didn't want to have a similar situation with Libler as with Barry potentially, where Libler's interested in it because of what he can get. She wants a genuine relationship that's not going to be tainted by money or thoughts of money or free lunches, right? Of course, we've also got to assume that that's true. Did Libler really not know that she had an inheritance? Maybe, maybe not. In March through May of 2020, Libler and Suzanne talked a lot about mountain biking, and Libler looked at the trails online in Colorado. Someone made the point that if Barry knew about Libler, knew about that the mountain biking came from him, that was the reason, if it was Barry who committed this crime, that Barry chose a mountain bike as the sort of mode at which she disappears. So maybe she disappears by going mountain biking with Jeff in Colorado. Or maybe she goes mountain biking with Jeff, hurts herself, and so it's actually his fault because, and it's what she deserved or whatever. She shouldn't have gone mountain biking with the guy she was having an affair with on Mother's Day, and then that's what happens to him, what happens to her. I'm just saying, some people have suggested this was part of the psychology of the fabric of the case, which I think is quite interesting. I don't know if I agree with it. I don't know if I disagree with it, but I think it's quite an interesting thing to think about. There's also mountain biking comes up in another case that they were listening to, right? I've only got 10 minutes left, and I've actually got to get on my bicycle. Don't worry, I have changed the tires, but I am going to have to get going. So it says here, Libler and Suzanne talked a lot about mountain biking, and Libler looked at the trails online in Colorado, and they sometimes talked before Suzanne went for a ride. Now, you can imagine if Suzanne talks with Libler and then goes for a ride, In other words, she talks to the guy she's having an affair with, then she goes for a mountain bike ride, well, then she's not at home. What if Barry arrived home just after Suzanne had gone for the ride and saw something on a computer screen that she just forgot to turn off, or something on her phone? And Barry says, oh, she's just talking to Jeff and now she's gone for a mountain bike ride. So anyway, they often talked before Suzanne went for a ride. Suzanne put her bike in her car on her way to the trailheads and did not often ride in her own neighborhood. That's quite important. I must say that's quite true for me as well. There's some rides I do in a certain way, but I also will put my bike in my car and then drive somewhere to in order to not to ride in my own neighborhood. He goes on to say, she normally rode in the evening for about half an hour or 40 minutes. So important. That is so important. So it shows it was totally out of character for her to have gone kind of, I guess it's implied that she went out in the morning. I think they only looked for her in the evening, so I suppose that's also possible, but Barry would say she rode every day. That's not really touched on here. But first of all, she doesn't ride in her own neighborhood, or didn't do that often. She normally rode in the evening, and she was normally only gone for like half an hour. So another question Barry could kind of have asked, I don't know whether it comes up, is how long has she been gone? Or he could have volunteered and said, you know what, she usually goes an hour before sunset, or whatever the case may be. Well, she must be missing at least an hour or two now. That never comes up. In the first week of May 2020, Suzanne told Libler the girls were going on a camping trip. That's really important as well. So this was known in the first week of May that the girls were going on a camping trip. So if there is a motive, if there is premeditation, you're going to want to coordinate your nefarious activity, your murder most foul, with the opportunity where the girls are not going to be in the way. A similar scenario possibly to the Chris Watts case. So I can do X and Y while Shanann is in Arizona. I can do X and Y based on when she's going to arrive home. I can do X and Y. I can arrange access to Survey 319 based on X, Y, and Z. So in this case, there may have already been knowledge of an affair. There may also have been knowledge of, our relationship is over. And now I've decided, actually, remember that text came in, I'm done, came in, I think, May 6th. And so it says here, in the first week of May 2020, May 6th is within the first week of May 2020, there was this knowledge that the girls are going on a camping trip. Oh, now I've thought, I can't stand the situation. I don't have control, etc., etc. Good night, Terry Dean. Terry says, thanks for making my day. It's always a great escape evaluating other people's issues. I hope to catch you tomorrow as well. Good night. Terry, I'm only going to be on another 5 minutes, so you're not missing much, but thank you for joining us. Thanks a lot, Terry. Okay, let's try and wrap this up. Do you see where I'm coming from? The way that this plays into potential premeditation, the opportunity that is presented by the girls not being home, right? Suzanne told Libler the girls were going on a camping trip that weekend, meaning it's just past the first, probably the second weekend in May, right? Because she disappeared May 9/10. It's kind of probably onto the second weekend. Libler said any time she was alone with Barry, she dreaded it. She didn't want to be alone with him. So she obviously dreaded them going away on this camping trip. And the question's got to come up, why was it happening that they were going away on Mother's Day. You would think that they wouldn't. Also, even in Barry's own story, this is a very interesting thing, that Barry, in his own contrivance, I think, he goes to a hotel in a faraway Broomfield on Mother's Day. So how does he choose to spend Mother's Day with Suzanne, but not being with her on Mother's Day? I think that from a mile away you could see puts up red flags. If Barry was innocent, and if Barry isn't innocent, the fact of how he behaved on Mother's Day, and the fact that it was Mother's Day and where was he on Mother's Day, tells you a lot, I think. In the same way that when Chris Watts said, you know what, if I call Shanann and she doesn't answer, it's not a big deal, but if her pals call her and she doesn't pick up, well, that is weird. That is telling you immediately there's problems in their relationship. Anyway, so she dreaded being alone with Barry. She didn't want to be alone with him. Barry refused to go to counseling, even though Suzanne offered. Barry told her, you just need to be who you were to me and everything will be fine. I think what he means is you just need to be who you were all along. You need to play that same role. You need to be the good wife. You must be the good Christian wife who obeys her husband, kind of thing. And don't question me and whatever. You know, if I come home with my zip open and I say it was a deer, that's it. It's quite interesting, the language he uses. You just need to be who you were and everything will be fine. Which if you analyze that statement, if you just aren't going to be who you were, everything's not going to be fine. Everything is not going to be fine. Libler said he thought two things could have happened to Suzanne. He, meaning Barry, either learned about us and snapped, or maybe she told him she was going to leave him. I think that's a very important statement, a very important question. Did Barry learn about Jeff? Now, you can imagine if Barry was peed off about what had happened at that party, and only to find out that they'd sneakily got back together again, you can imagine anybody being really not happy. So you've actually held a candle for this guy all along. You've been with me, but you've actually liked somebody else all along. So that's the question. Did Barry learn about Jeff? Did he know who it was? And did that make him very, very angry? For Suzanne to say, I'm done, didn't that make Barry search even more? Bear in mind, he had a few days to search and to confirm his suspicions. Did Shanann suspect Chris Watts was having an affair? On the day that she arrived back from Arizona, how sure do you think Shanann was that Chris Watts was having an affair? So it could actually be both. It could be that Barry learned about us and snapped, and she told him that she was going to leave him. So it's those two together. It could be that. Agents asked Libler what Barry's reaction was when Suzanne mentioned she wanted to separate from him. Libler responded, he was very much against it. So in a situation where people want to get divorced, and one really wants to get divorced, but you artificially held together, that can often lead to murder. That did lead to murder in the Chris Watts case. One person wants to leave, the person with more money, I guess, and the other person doesn't. And then what happens? She would say he wants everything to look perfect on the outside. That is almost a summary of the Watts family and the aftermath. Chris Watts wanting things to look, what is it going to look like if I tell Shanann I'm having an affair and she's pregnant? What is my mistress going to think or feel if other people know that as well, right? she would say he wants everything to look perfect on the outside. And he apparently did tell investigators when they asked him, what was your marriage like? He said it was perfect. Now, you've got to ask yourself, why on earth would you, wow, it's past 5 a.m., I need to get going. Why would you say you had a perfect marriage under the circumstances of your wife disappearing if it wasn't perfect and if it was so far from perfect? Why wouldn't you mention that text about I'm done? Wouldn't you say, you know what, she sent me this text saying I'm done. Maybe she decided to leave. Why did she send this text? She wasn't very happily married. Why weren't you happily married? Well, that's going to open the can of worms about the affair. I just want to finish page 16. I really need to wrap this up quickly. Libler said he does not believe Suzanne reached out to him with the intention of having a boyfriend. He described Suzanne as beautiful, kind, someone who treated people well and a good listener, traits that attracted him to her. Libler said Suzanne is naive in some ways because she assumed the best of people and did not see what lies beneath. Ominous word. She did not see what lies beneath. While Suzanne lived in Indiana with Barry, he acted suspiciously, like he was having an affair. Libler added, and then I can tell you, too, she, over the last year, she's like, I'd love for him to find a new girlfriend and just get out. So she doesn't mind if he has an affair and just gets a girlfriend and leaves her. Quite ironic. Libler said that so long as Suzanne gratified Barry sexually, it was fine. Just shows the superficiality of their relationship, if this is true. As long as she did that, Barry was happy. He added, I don't think she was deriving a lot of pleasure out of things. So she wasn't really having a genuine relationship, a genuine marriage, a genuine experience. And that's why she wanted the marriage didn't really feel real to her. She just wanted a real life, right? All of us do. When agents asked Libler if he thought that or knew it, he said, I know. She said, it's not pleasurable. Suzanne told Libler that she would not completely starve Barry of sex. Okay, quite personal there. Agents confirmed with Libler that he no longer had the phone he used to speak with Suzanne. He explained that in June 2020, he dropped his phone on his stone steps and the faceplate shattered. Libler sent the phone into his company and they sent him a new one. Interesting backstory there as well. The phone the company sent Libler had all the same corporate apps on it as his previous phone, but none of the personal apps. Interesting. Libler provided consent forms for his DNA, phone records, and the logins for his social media accounts. Your affiant served search warrants for LinkedIn and WhatsApp and received records for Suzanne's LinkedIn accounts with photos and texts shared between her and Libler. Your affiant also served warrants on the Verizon account for Libler. The following data was collected. I'm going to stop at this point. We at the top of page 17, and it goes through the interactions on LinkedIn and the Verizon call record. Some quite interesting information there. So I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you guys very much for joining me. I'm going to have to skedaddle in the next 5 minutes. I'm going to have to get changed in 5 minutes as well. I just want to thank my mods for being here, especially to Stephanie. I don't know if Bria is still here. It's 5 o'clock in the morning, so I don't know if Bria is still here. Thanks for joining us, Cotton Star, Terry Dean, Nisi, who else? Robbie Robin. Thanks a lot for the really generous contributions from Marie Stark and also Cotton Star as well. And yeah, just good to have you guys here. I know it was pretty short notice. Also, welcome to our new members, Margaret Zabinski. Good to have you here. Bear in mind, I'm going to be doing another live with Stephanie on Vincent van Gogh in the Van Gogh series. We'll be talking about another area dealing with the Van Gogh, the mystery of why he died, what happened in the last summer of his life. Okay, so that is my story. Madeleine has just joined us. Well, I'm just about to depart. Anyway, welcome, Madeleine, and cheerio as well. Robbie Robbins says, thank you very much for the live, and thank you, Mod. I think you'll agree with me that every time you go through these deep dives with affidavit, you find out a lot of, it's not like a smoking gun, but it's a lot of detail that helps crystallize the whole picture. Does that make sense? Stephanie says, no sleep. My sleep patterns have been totally messed up. I did try and fix them, but they've just stubbornly been out of whack. I've also had people doing work around my home and inside my home, painting certain rooms, and just aggravated an already bad situation. So I am going to have to make sure I don't do lives that perpetuate an already aggravated situation. But anyway, I'll probably see you guys at 2-3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. What time suits you tomorrow, Stephanie? Anyway, let me know. But again, thank you everyone for being here. And a lot is happening in the Morphew case. Check out my the video I've just put up dealing with the family dynamics. That's part 1 of 2. And this episode, I'm going to need to continue. I didn't get nearly as far as I needed to in terms of these pages. I wanted to actually get to page 25, and I think I only got to page, what was it, 13, 16. So I fell 9 pages short of where I wanted to get to. Unfortunately, I can't continue. I've got something else I've got to do right now. So thanks a lot for all of you being here. There are more people here than I expected, but we'll definitely do this again. Perhaps, I was going to say perhaps in the middle of the week, but definitely next Saturday. So anyway, thank you guys for being here, and I'll see you guys next time. Ciao.